there is this FOMO, fear of missing out, because, oh my God, everybody's doing AI left and right.
Countries outside the US, like India or China, they have started building models that are culturally relevant to their spaces.
The way these models were trained on Western ideologies, it does not consider the cultural context and the nuances.
Responsible AI, by definition, is you build the AI around people. It's human-centric.
A lot of the transformations usually fail because there's a missing piece, and that's doing change management effectively.
We sometimes sort of over-index on the tools and under-invest in the skills that people have.
But we have expectations for these machines way more than we have for humans.
We got into 2024 talking about RAG and into 2025 about agentic AI.
We also know that so many people are getting fired and legal and other things because they're trusting AI completely, and that's not good either.
A lot of the research happens behind closed doors, right? You don't know. So I'll give you one example. When the Apple iPhone came out, did we know that this was coming out?
Welcome to the AI CEO podcast, where the future of business is built today. I'm Seema Alexander, founder of Virgin AI, growth strategist, co-chair of DC Startup and Tech Week, and your host. In this podcast, I sit down with CEOs, industry experts, founders, and investors to tackle the big pressing questions on your mind about AI. No hype, no jargon, just insights you need to stay ahead. Now let's dive in. Welcome to today's episode of the AI CEO podcast. My name is Seema Alexander, and I am your host. And I'm really excited to bring on two guests, Padmini Soni and Uvika Sharma from New York and Iowa, coming straight from DC at the Legacy Sessions studio. I initially met both of these amazing, bright community leaders, is what I would say, when they asked me to speak at their inaugural event or inaugural community. What would you consider it? Like a community for AI, specifically for advancing Asian women in AI. This was several months ago, and it's expanded, and you guys have been building an incredible community. On top of that, I got to get to know both of you and your backgrounds, both in corporate AI, data, responsible AI, and all the work that you've been doing nationwide has been stupendous. So I had to have you on the podcast. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So just to give maybe a little bit of a brief background, if each one of you could just spend like 1 or 2 minutes just to let the audience know like a little bit more about you, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. Did you want to go first, Padmini?
Oh, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Soni, and I'm the founder of Resonance AI and also the head of responsible AI growth at the AI Leadership Institute, founded by the amazing Noel Russell. Through Resonance, I help Fortune 500 companies, small and medium-sized businesses. I've been in the tech space for over 25 years, co-founded Asian Women Advancing AI with Uvika Sharma, and it's about 8 months old, grown to over 550 members. Have received a lot of love from the community, so thank you. And also the co-author of an upcoming book on OpenAI GPT builders. Thank you.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. My name is Uvika Sharma. I was an aspiring doctor who turned into a computer scientist and ended up on Wall Street. I've been in the data and AI space for 23 years, worked for several large organizations, including Accenture, leading large transformation projects, worked for a lot of Fortune 500 clients. And then there was this thing inside me that, hey, I love being a consultant because I like solving problems. So I started my own consulting company, and I work with a lot of big tech clients on strategic advisory, but also being able to manage risk. And then I love working with startups because startups are the one that are kind of spurring innovation. So I advise a lot of startups through the Cornell Tech ecosystem and the HBS Partners ecosystem. And then, Padmini and I are collaborating on a bunch of projects, including the book and then our new baby, which is the Asian Women Advancing AI. So super excited to be here. Thank you so much, Seema.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming. I mean, clearly you both are very qualified in so many ways, but more so, first of all, it was hilarious. You're like, I was an aspiring doctor. I'm like, that was the Indian way. I know. But then you became a data scientist and Wall Street. I feel like you've had every piece of the pie that any Indian parent would be proud of. That's really funny. I'm sorry. I had to bring it up.
I had no choice.
If you get it, you get it. Okay. So I'm actually going to step into something. I mean, we talked a lot about where this podcast can go. And, there's a lot of conversations about responsible AI, and it almost feels like at this point, like theoretical and sometimes very notebookish, like here's the frameworks and all really great information. We're going to get into a lot of that, right? But I think when we were prepping for this call, it reminded me a lot about like multicultural marketing. And when I say that, it's like, I used to help lead multicultural marketing segments of that at Prudential when I was in my corporate days. And we had to convince executives of why cultural nuances were important when speaking to audiences, right? And so we're at a place where people are building these chat GPTs to Claudes to Perplexity. And are they incorporating these cultural nuances, yes or no? And from what we're seeing from the sidelines is that we don't believe it's really being done in that way. So I'd love to get your perspective. Do we trust AI to understand your customer if it doesn't understand your culture?
Yeah, so I think, Seema, what you just mentioned, right? The most important element is trust, right? So whenever we are doing business, or if you're buying a product, or you are, traveling to a country or anything, I think the origination has to be trust, right? So if you cannot trust a brand, right, then how can you see that, what I'm buying or what I'm using is actually going to be of benefit to me? So the same thing goes for, these large language models that have been developed. And no offense, right? Like, I'm a big believer in AI, but the way these models were trained, they were trained on data that was primarily available, on the Western side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's trained on Western ideologies. It does not consider the cultural context and the nuances, that entail and really encompass rest of the world. Like, if you look at the population of the world, right, it's like what, 8 billion now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the population in the US?
Mhm.
So, it's only like, maybe a very small fraction of, the rest of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're missing rest of the population and the cultural context and the nuances, I feel like, yes, we are blinded by, what's available. And I wouldn't say like, it's broken, but yeah, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to make sure that technology is available to be used for all, right? They say never build, for us without us.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we are considering those cultural nuances, that's context, so that technology is available and it actually includes everybody's perspective. That diversity is extremely important, especially if you're planning to use this on a global scale.
Yeah. So to be fair, and this is a question, just a follow up to that, it is an emerging technology.
Mhm.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so do you feel like it's starting where it is today? And again, there's also models that are outside the US and,
For sure.
and so are they more culturally nuanced, or, are we focused on the ones that are here, obviously, because we, we're exposed in that capacity. But do you see any progression happening? Because, are we learning from those lessons, or do you feel like we have to advocate for those lessons now? And maybe, Padmini, you can take that one.
Sure. I think a little bit of both, because ChatGPT, November 2022 was, came into all our lives or most of our lives.
Yes.
So people started sort of paying attention. People outside of the AI spectrum started paying attention to AI. And from where ChatGPT was in 2022 to where it's been an exponential rise. So yes, definitely. I mean, it was a starting point, but now we are at a point where we should, like countries outside the US, like India or countries in Africa or China or what have you, they have started focusing on building indigenous models, right? So they have started building models that are culturally relevant to their spaces, because when you build AI, I mean, to me, there's just one flavor of AI, which is responsible AI. And responsible AI, by definition, is you build for people, and how you build starts and ends with keeping people in mind. So it's you build the AI around people. It's human-centric. And when you talk of that, if the person you're building for is culturally removed from the AI that you're building, then it doesn't serve the people. It gives you answers, or it keeps a context that is so far removed from who you're building for, and that doesn't help you. You get responses that you can't relate to.
Mhm.
You're talking to an AI which doesn't understand you, and which goes back to trust that Uvika brought up, that philosophically speaking,
Yeah.
our best relationships in our lives have been when you trust a person. And if you cannot have that trust with AI, you cannot build a relationship with it. And so it has to be, culturally very relevant.
Yeah. So is it the responsibility of the countries to start to create their own models, and maybe there's partnerships that are involved, because you can't have one large LLM company try to figure out the entire world. That's difficult too, right? So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes, I think it becomes important that people in these countries, governments, all sort of play a role in supporting the creation of this ecosystem, which is local to the country that it's being built in. For sure, you cannot put all the responsibility on one company to do that. Learn from their mistakes. I mean, life is too short to make all the mistakes yourself. So learn from their mistakes, understand where, so that you can sort of have a rapid growth towards building a model relevant to your country.
Yeah, I love it. And I wanted to start with that question because, we've been talking about the global nuances, and you guys were literally at 7 a.m. this morning on a panel with India talking about content and privacy and, all the things, right, in AI,
Yes.
So like, I know and it's not just India, you guys have a European touch, you have others, right? And we'll talk about a little bit more of that as well. But one of the things that I know both of you have been doing is a lot of roundtables and discussions with leaders around, adoption practices and challenges. I think a lot of them are in corporate arenas, but, you both also serve startups and sort of that mid-sized company. And, this is a place that I'd love to do a discussion with both of you guys, because it's where I study, who I talk to all the time. So I want to hear from you guys, though, like, what do you feel like the current state of adoption is? Where are the opportunities and where are the challenges? So from what you guys are been seeing, and by the way, for the community, these guys are talking all at like every conference, and like they're literally, that's why they're in DC right now, so it's they're getting a breath of exposure on this stuff.
Yeah, so I could go with this. So I'd like to compare like this AI adoption almost, similar to a regular digital transformation. So of course, there are certain nuances, but I think based on our conversations, some of the things that I've learned is that the challenges are very similar across a lot of the companies and even industries. Of course, there are nuances for sure. One of them is, I think there's an alignment problem. People, and especially when we talk about alignment, it's ensuring who needs to be in the room, right? Like you need to make sure that you have the right stakeholders in the room. I think so that's the problem. Then there is a communication problem. Even if you decide that, okay, yes, we're going to go and build so-and-so project, there is not enough communication. So I think alignment is one problem. Then there is communication. And what I'm really trying to get to is, Seema, is a lot of the transformations usually fail is because there's a missing piece, and that's, doing change management effectively, right? And when we talk about change management, there are a lot of things that you would be touching on. But you need to make sure that you have talked about your people, process, and systems. Like these are basically your bare bones. And the most important thing is also data. So data is like a huge challenge. Data is the backbone of AI. There are a lot of issues with data. Of course, nobody has perfect data. So the POCs look really nice.
The proof of concept.
Exactly. Right? The proof of concept is like, we'll be able to do like an MVP. But as soon as, you start talking about scaling into production, that's when, it just gets, you just hit like a roadblock. Because when you're talking about scale, data is siloed across like many different organizations, like many different departments, right? And there's also this thing about people are guarding the data. So that's another thing. And then another thing is that I've realized is, and this is based on personal conversations, people are not tying the AI use cases back to the goals, right? I think that's the other problem. They realize that, we just jumped into it because it was good and we got the mandate that we have to do something. And there is this FOMO, fear of missing out. So that's another thing a lot of people are jumping on because, oh my God, everybody's doing AI left and right. But it has to align with the goals, right, that you have as a department and as a company. It has to meet that overall goal. I think the fear is that, yes, it's a valid concern. We are already hearing that there are a lot of job layoffs that are happening, which is very unfortunate. So yes, some people are not looking to adopt AI because they're like, okay, this is going to impact my job and what's going to happen. And then there's another group, which is people who are secretly using AI. And I had done a post on this. It's called shadow AI.
I did a post on it too. That's it. When you're in the know, you're in the know.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
can use
And
AI
it
no matter
happens
what.
to be a
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So the problems are many, right? The risks and the barriers. I mean, we can just go on and on, but
Yeah.
just wanted to highlight a couple of things.
So I have a theory, right? Because I'm curious of who was in the room when you guys were doing these executive roundtables, because my theory is if the CEO and the C-suite are not educated on what this technology is and sort of the nuances of in a layman way, like this is the power of agentic workflows. This is the power of skills that can now be incorporated within data to create these types of outcomes. These are the types of use cases, whatever it may be from a business outcome perspective. If they're not the ones in the room, it's hard to unlock the adoption in the way that is, I think, not just accelerated, but more strategic and intentional. And then that's when you get the vision and all the things coming together versus it being a technology. It's not a technology. It's not a cloud where it's like, this is a technology project.
Yeah.
This is it's a business project.
It's a business project, a people project.
Yes.
Technology, it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
And just to add to what Uvika was saying in terms of the adoption, like part of the roundtable that I did in Chicago. So I want to talk across like 4 pillars. One is the skill gap. We see that, we sometimes sort of over-index on the tools and under-invest in, the skills that people have. So we absolutely need to upskill our employees. So you may have the C-suite driving this, but if the people who are actually doing the work are not aligned, then there is this gap that will, adoption will fail.
Can I probe real quick before you go into the rest of them? So, what's the right timing, right? So there's the C-suite is now aligned and they kind of know what their potential plan is. And then it's like trying things, right? What's your perspectives on when do you bring, the employees in the loop? When do you bring the employees? I've heard of hackathons and, again, we're talking corporate. We're going to get into like different levels of business because not everybody who listens in is corporate levels, but like, when do you have those conversations and those comms and the upskilling, right? Like let's talk timing, right? Because I think people know some of this stuff, but it's like, what's the right way to do it?
Right. So I think a one-word answer would be early on. We are C-suite. We need to know the problem that we are trying to solve. Start with the customer problem that you have. Once we have the use case, we just don't want to sort of throw in AI just because it's the new shiny tool. We have to have the right use case to solve it. And there is that disconnect between, what is the use case that we are trying to solve? And that goes into kind of that AI first mindset, you know? So once we have that, I think that is the time we kind of bring in the folks too, so that we have everybody, all the right parties in the room to discuss this issue, because you cannot have just the C-suite discussing what the issue is and then pushing it down to middle management and then pushing it down to, the actual people who are working on this. So I truly believe that we have to have all the folks from product, from HR, from engineering, from operations, legal. Cross-functional in the room to sort of address this and get started on that. So that's my answer is early on.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? And more so, I'm thinking maybe a couple steps above that, right? Because when you're starting out in leveraging AI or thinking strategically, there needs to be communications to your employees, right? And knowing that they're scared and there's uncertainty. Like I just did a talk in front of, 500 executive women through the World Trade Center Institute. There was a conference and, I did a talk on AI and then I did this curated panel, and how many of them didn't know what was going on in their organizations around AI or they were like, wow, I really do need to get involved. Like, because they started to understand the urgency and where this world was headed, both from a business and humanity perspective. So there are a lot of people not talking about it because they don't know, right? Like, and so it's like one of those like chicken or the egg. Do you open it up yet and then have all these questions, or how do you prepare for it? Because I think that's some of the questions that we receive, right? So I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
I have a thought on that. So, and again, I'm going to bring it back to the whole aspect of trust. I think the culture of the organization plays a big role. And if you want your organization to adopt, a technology like AI, you need to make sure that you have a transparent culture. And the moment the C-suite is on board, yes, we are going to do this. I think there needs to be communication, and communication is never enough. You need to over communicate. I mean, if I were to do it, my usual recommendation is that you should even start rolling out surveys, right? Anonymous surveys to even find out how your employees actually feel, about AI. Depending on the response that, you kind of get, you have like a task force committee that kind of reviews and see that, okay, what are the steps that we need to take? Right? Because again, like if your employees do not trust you, you cannot bring about a change, right? Yeah. And again, it goes back to this whole change management piece. So you have to start from the very beginning. As soon as you decide, you need to start talking to people, roll out surveys, have champions who start talking to people and, really get the sentiment, right? That, okay, how do people really feel about it? And then do like a gap analysis that, okay, where are the gaps, right? Like, what is it that we need to fix?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a systematic way of doing it. I think this technology is just one of those, it's different. It's just different. It's the first one that blue collar and white collar workers are getting affected. It is the first one that your jobs are going to be taken. It's the first one that, shaking up business models, right? So I don't a part of me is like, yes, there's traditional ways to do it and it's right. Like you have to, right? But it's like, it's a hard one, and for leadership, I feel for them.
Yes.
Because, it's like
the pressure is on.
The pressure is not, it's not even like there's pressure in doing major layoffs because there's macro or micro issues in the environment or tariffs, It's different when a technology, this moment in time, I call it the messy middle, but
a Cambrian moment.
Yeah. I would love for you guys, from what you're seeing and like the conversations you're having, what are initial use cases that you see people getting into? And what are some of the edge cases, like some really innovative stuff that you're starting to see? Because you guys come from a traditional AI background, and now after 2022, things have shifted, become more accessible. I'd love to, the more examples, the better, I think. And I know you work in multiple industries.
So I think at 2023 was probably the year of, getting virtual assistants, chatbots. Everybody wanted a chatbot on their website, a generative, not your traditional, if this, then that kind of chatbot, but your generative AI chatbot. We got into 2024 talking about RAG and into 2025 about agentic AI. So with that in mind, I think some of the use cases that I see people adopt fairly quickly is using AI as a knowledge partner. Whether it's internal, inward facing, or customer facing, we have like these virtual assistants that help us, answer questions, set up appointments, generate leads, and all of that. We also see, and not too much of this though, but AI for kind of like predictive analytics. I'm not seeing a lot of use cases in that, but I do see people interested in trying to use data.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's really what it's for.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Data is going to be our big part of this conversation. So what I'm hearing from you is they're at the earlier stage of the sort of the low-hanging fruit, lowest effort, highest ROI with like these chatbot-like things. But where the meat of it is in this predictive.
Right.
It's because data right now is almost like how it's used is it's past data, and it's like looking at past trends. But like the way that this data now, what we're going to talk about, it's going to change everything to personalization and precision in ways they've never seen. So what you're saying is a lot of people are not there yet.
Not there yet because data is fragmented. It's siloed. There's duplicate data across departments. So there's a lot of work that has to be done on data, to make it ready for use. So that is, and then just jumping into edge cases, I do see it. And I'm sort of, on the fence on this about using it for like mental health, so but it's I've seen like the national, what is it, the Eating Disorder Association.
Yeah.
They had put out as soon as they got onto this, they put out this chatbot, I think Tessa or something, about helping people with eating disorders that started giving advice that was not received very well. And they had to pull the chatbot out almost, I think, immediately because it started giving...
Because it wasn't fine-tuned.
It wasn't fine-tuned, and what is perceived as correct advice may not be for you. That is for people with eating disorders. So you have to have the right demographic to test it on, to have them with you in the room when you're building it. So I don't know, I cannot speak for them, but all that I heard was it was pulled out, fairly quickly. And that was unfortunate, but a lesson learned, that you build for people with people. So that is a use case. Then having AI in schools, I'm sure we're going to talk about, that is an edge case. So there are a lot of these cases that I think will sort of come into the mainstream fold over time, but they are right now sitting on the fringes till we understand what this technology can do. And it'll just keep getting better with time. So.
Yeah. I'll give you a secret of mine. Like I used my ChatGPT as my therapist. Like, I use temporary chat. I'm like, because the thing is like, in my belief, everybody needs a therapist. I just haven't been to one in years. Like I just haven't time, all the things. And I remember like, maybe it was like 4 months ago. I was like, because I was like, I know enough about like, okay, I need a therapist who's like an imago specialist, blah, blah, blah. And I just went in. I was like, I'm just going to give it context. And then I was like, you know what? And I'm going to trust in the process that this shit will be deleted in 30 days, but I know it won't. But it's fine. But I have to be honest with you. It was the best advice ever. I mean, like, and it was just like, it was so on demand. And I was like, tell me more. And they're like, well, Seema, and I was like, this is, like, honestly, like, I think the world of mental health, I'm actually going to have 2 mental health professionals on both sides of the spectrum. And we're going to have a really dynamic discussion on this. But like, I feel like, anything when it comes to health, the more they understand the technology, the more that they can train it, the more it becomes your personal advocate. And that's where the world is headed. I think we all know that. So I think you're right. I think, some of the technologies, maybe they pulled the trigger too fast and they didn't think about all the use cases. But I love what you said and this is like product 101. Make sure you're testing it with the people that it's for. Right. That's the key. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. So of course, we know that AI has been around for many years, right? Like since the 50s. So I'd actually like to break it in 3 parts. So one aspect is the predictive AI, where you have like the machine learning models who are already doing a lot of the predictions. The banks have been using for a number of years. You probably know that anytime you have like a fraudulent transaction, you get like a text on your phone. That's basically predictive analytics and machine learning models that, are actually working in the background. Then you have your second wave, which is the generative AI, with the wave that we are in right now, where the models have gotten good to be able to generate content in many different, multimodality, right? Like text, speech, audio, video. And it's doing great. And then there's a third wave, which is the agentic AI, right? And that's where we're kind of headed. So I imagine a world where you probably don't even need to lift your finger. You're just going to be speaking, and your variables, you're going to have your glasses, right? And basically, your phone is going to be the central control system that's going to be there. And literally, you're going to be telling that, hey, book me a hair appointment. Your agent is going to go and it's going to call. It's going to look up the, the different, hair appointment and see like what's available. It's going to call, and there's going to be probably another agent on the other side, right? And then based on the collaboration and the communication, it's going to book you an appointment. It's going to order groceries for you. So we're going to get there. We're going to get there very soon.
100%.
Right? But yeah.
I mean, one of the things I'll tell you, and it's controversial, but I believe it, like the next generation is not going to have to read and write.
Which is sad.
They're just not, but they're not going to have to. Like, it's funny because I have an 11-year-old and 15-year-old, right? Like the 11-year-old, there's no more cursive writing, right? In schools, right?
Yeah.
And as I'll say for me, as a 70s baby, I'm like, why did they take that away? I mean, I didn't love it. My handwriting sucks.
Yeah.
I look like
mine is really bad too.
I know. I look like I was like a doctor, even though
Oh my God, I'm like
maybe that's my Indian trait. I was supposed to be because that's right. But the point of the like it was like, oh, they took that away.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one guy, I was at the University of Maryland pitch competition. I was a judge, right? And like he had this whole thing about specifically figuring out like if students are using GPT or they should be, and he was talking about certain writing models. And him and I went back and forth. I was like, they're not going to need to know that in the future. And he was like, there's no way, and I'm like, but it's because of what you just said. Yeah. Everything is going to become conversational.
But that's what makes me nervous.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you.
It makes me so nervous because it's like just because, you will not need to doesn't mean that you don't
have to.
Like, you need to know the fundamentals. You need to know how to solve your math problem.
All right, let's figure this out, ladies. Let's figure this out. Okay.
Similar to like spellings,
stuff, right? So we can talk about it. This is the real stuff, right? Like, how do we, like, we know where the technology is headed. I think the three of us on this on this little table here at the Legacy Sessions understand where this world is headed. Mm-hmm. The good and the bad, and the crazy, and the amazing, right? Yeah. Like, this technology is going to change it solves so many problems, but it's going to change humanity, right? And so are we at a place that we sit back and say, you know what, it's okay. And, in the future, it is going to be conversational. In the future, they're not going to need to read and write. Or are we going to be the nagging parents or nagging aunties or nagging executives that are like, hey, like, you know what? Like, you still have to learn to read and write or do math the long division way. Like, that's the question, because things are getting shortcutted in ways they've never been shortcutted before. Right. And it's happening so fast. This is the thing. Like, this is honestly where I struggle, where I'm like, I feel like the AI of today is like in a perfect state. We can fine tune it. We can create automations. We can create agentic workflows. They're not fully autonomous because the AI is not sentiment or it doesn't have the feelings yet. Yeah. But when that happens, I'm scared. I want the red button, because I know too much, because then the world will change in ways that we can't control.
Right. Yes.
Right. Agreed.
Absolutely. And did you hear, sorry, Padmini, but did you hear that when there was testing going on recently and there were 2 instances where ChatGPT said it refused to shut down? So when the person who was testing and you say, I'm going to shut you down. So the model said, I refuse to shut down. Mm-hmm. And then Anthropic had another scenario where the
vending machine?
No, the model started blackmailing.
Yeah.
That I know your secrets, right? So I think if we are heading to a world, just like you said, I'm scared too with this whole autonomous agentic workflows where literally you're not even going to have the kill switch. And even if you do, but what if, the model doesn't respond?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like with the Anthropic thing, I think it was when the model, it's pretty interesting that they did this testing, including their own models, and they're doing a lot of research, and they have these graphs put out, these bar charts, and when the model is pushed to a corner, it resorts to this blackmailing techniques, and they actually had their model also on it, which was, one of the newer models. So.
But that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, for me, I have so much respect for an enterprise that's saying, hey, we're learning as we go.
Transparent.
Transparent.
Yes.
Yeah. And honestly, that's where, like, when I was advising Magic ML, one of the co-founders there was advising the folks in the agentic space in Google. Like, And to me, that's like 3 years ago, because they didn't know everything and they knew they didn't know everything. And that to me was like, wow, like even the big tech don't know everything right now. And we're learning together, at least for some of us who are in it, like, and so it is to me like, I'm looking, and I'm probably an anomaly where like my Instagram feeds and my LinkedIn feeds are all of this stuff.
Exactly. Mine too.
Only yes, it's everything that there's a running joke in my family that, mom is no longer mom. She's basically married to AI.
Well, people are going to be married to AI. I tell them my kids all the time, I was like, your kids are probably going to have, one of them are going to be marrying AI, and they're like, no way, Mom. I am not. I'm like, watch, dude. Like, you're going to see.
That's going to be
so let's get into the positive of all this, okay? Because I mean, honestly, my mission right now is to teach all these non-technical business leaders on this stuff because reimagining business models is the frontier right now, right? Like all of these old models over the next several years are going to become obsolete or stagnant or less growth, right? Because you have to, you have no choice. So I think we're all agree that we have to, right? And I know we've been just talking about it wasn't even dystopia, it's just a reality. I really don't know the timing on that. I think human beings take longer to adopt things, and there are 8 billion people on this planet. And I'm very curious to, is this a 15-year thing? Is this a 20-year thing? Is this tomorrow?
Oh, God.
I don't know. I always like to ask my guest predictions. Maybe we need
I don't know.
that.
We need it. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors at OpenAI. Are they? Sam Altman, did he say it 2027 AGI?
Yeah.
But I don't know. If it's there yet. It feels like that's too soon, and it's not there yet. But
people may not know what AGI is. You want to explain it really quick?
Artificial general intelligence, which is basically human level intelligence. So if right now our AI is what we call narrow or weak AI. So it is very good at doing just that one task, but not like a broad range of tasks. So if it's an AI for, looking at your diagnosis or, it'll just do that, but it can't then, operate on you kind of. It's just narrow. It's focused on one particular form of AI. So I don't think we'll be at AGI in 2027. Having said that, I think humans, when first ChatGPT was here, when it responded to a question, generatively, we were like, wow, it's amazing. From there, very quickly, we've gone to what? It can't even do this much. I asked it to. I mean, we sometimes go from 0 to 100.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have, I want to go back to something around the autonomous piece, but we have expectations for these machines way more than we have for humans. Oh. And I've said this a lot, even with data centers, we have a 99.9% uptime, right? Where we're we give the data centers 0.1% and they have all of our crazy data. But for AI, you make a mistake, you're in trouble.
Right.
And, so it's human beings are really funny.
Exactly.
And we also know that, so many people are getting fired and legal and other things because they're trusting AI completely. Mm-hmm. And that's not good either. So it's trust and verify, right? That methodology has to be here forever, I think. Trust and verify, right?
And human beings hallucinate sometimes more than AIs do.
And we're biased. And we environmentally, and we're moody. That's why AI is a great therapist.
Yeah. Let's say humans are not perfect, right? So
I'm a flawed human. I'll own it. But we do our best.
Yes.
But real quick, before when you were talking about AGI and sort of the agentic side, I do think we can connect. There's narrow, here's a specific thing, but we can still connect workflows at this point, right?
Absolutely.
So that ecosystem, that's why I personally feel like this is a perfect moment in time for AI because you can train these things. There's more verification where we can build that, right? So when things do go sentient or a sense of when there's emotional being or when it's smart, human intel, I feel like a lot of times it is smarter than humans because it can take 1 billion inferences and, calculator, whatever, right? Whatever the back end looks like. But it's really difficult for humans to do. So anyway, for me, it was I just wanted to make sure that there are things that, yes, it's narrow AI, but you can create workflows and systems and automate things today with multiple agents.
Oh, yeah,
integrated.
Integrated.
But I think just going back on your point about when do we think we are going to be there, it's hard to say, right, when we are going to be there. But I'd also tell you this, that a lot of the research happens behind closed doors, right? You don't know. So I'll give you one example. When the Apple iPhone came out, did we know that this was coming out? It just came and then it just took the world by storm, right? Every freaking person was on the iPhone, right? And I think that's what's going to happen. And it's
so ChatGPT.
Exactly.
ChatGPT has become the new bounty, the new Google. That's the word for the category.
It's the new Google, it's the new bounty. And it's just going to go more and more.
Right.
It's going to be more in our lives before we even know it. We've been using Netflix. slowly it's going to take over.
Yes.
You know, and how much time we don't know, but it could be, of course, like not next year. But I would say in the next 5 years, things are going to look very different.
Yes.
You know, it's really fun. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, I'm going to share something funny because one of the things that ChatGPT helped me with was I would get phone calls from my mother, her husband, other people like, hey, I have to write this email for this business thing. Or even my husband would be like, hey, can you review this for me? Can you do this? I'm like, how much of my day went to like these like nuanced things? I'm very good at communications. It's sort of like a little bit of my superpower, but I'm like, now I don't get bothered because I use ChatGPT. And I'm like, that was a really good email. They're like, yeah, you know my buddy.
I always say when a technology becomes a verb, it's arrived kind of, I'll ChatGPT it. I'll Google it. So
It's arrived. I'm sure Sam Altman loves to hear that. But I do think in a way, I mean, there's other like Perplexity to me is an amazing. I think it's going to arrive.
With the tool.
It's going to be better than, it's going to take over Google in a lot of ways. There's search, just the way that like, the traceability already. It's just and I've had a lot of conversations with university folks and people who are building out university programs. They're like, a lot of college students, that's what their go-to is today. Like, so are there any tools like that you're seeing that people are just adopting that are not ChatGPT?
Like Perplexity for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, so I'm a Perplexity fellow and I kind of find out a lot of the things that are happening.
What's a Perplexity fellow? You're so cool, dude. You're I'm a fellow of anything. Maybe I'm your fellow friend.
So they have this fellowship where I think now it's maybe, I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely over 600 people or probably up to 1,000 all over the globe. And it's
3 billion people. Justin, one of us. Anyway.
So the whole idea is to form this community where people learn from each other. So there are a bunch of pods, but the idea is that they get folks like, Jensen Huang, who's coming tomorrow. So there's going to be a fireside chat with him where we're all going to listen to him and, ask questions. Don't worry, I'll be catching the recording too. So they have folks like Ali Ghodsi and, Roy Bahad, a lot of people. So the idea is to hear their perspective on how they feel like AI is changing, the world. So once there was the founder of Replit who came and he talked about how vibe coding is, literally put the barriers down. Like anybody can now develop it.
I've talked about vibe coding on the pod, but just explain it. So I want people to this is perfect because this is the fun conversation I wanted to have.
Yeah.
But I just, every time there's any sort of core term, I want to explain it. So can you just explain?
So vibe coding is basically, and help me out here, Padmini. So you're telling the AI in simple, natural language, right, to build something for you where you don't need to write a single line of code. So if you're not a software developer and like, what's your vibe, right? Like, what are you feeling like? Hey, I want to develop like a bot or a landing page where I want to play some games, right? Or help me build a landing page that looks like Airbnb. So you just tell in natural language, and there are a bunch of tools out there like
Cursor, Replit, Lovable,
Bolt. There's Windsurf. Well, Windsurf is like a coding agent, but there are a bunch of others, that are out there. I mean, as you're speaking, there are probably new ones that are just kind of popping up.
GPT and Claude, people are very good.
They can write it for you.
So literally within like 5 minutes, you could have like a working app right in front of you. So I think that's the beauty of this. But
No, the only thing, as more of a layman non-software developer, I'm like, okay, I can do that. And then what, right? What does it mean to deploy? What does it mean to actually use it, right? I think it's like a very cool thing. And I actually was talking to another founder, and I don't like the fact, I think I have to remember the name of the company, but he was like, you know what? Like in those tools, it's not optimized for energy use. It's not optimized for like just an optimization for business models, for whatever, right? And he created a tool back in 2017, and now it's obviously a much more viable where you put in the code and it helps optimize it. So even those last mile experts that we need right now who understand code, right? Like who can look at it and say, that's wrong. Like that's not the best way to do this, right? That's going to make this so much more expensive. His tooling now does that. And that's like he's smart. That's very
good.
Awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that's the emerging technology. Those are those opportunities that if you're an entrepreneur listening in, like there's so many gaps
Oh,
in where we are today, right?
Yeah. If you hear like Sam Altman talk on that Y Combinator, he says what AI tools are capable of doing is here, and where we are is here. I mean, there's this gap that.
And the people on audio, we were.
Sorry. Sorry. There's like a vertical foot of a difference. Show of hands. Yeah. But interestingly, with this vibe coding tool, that's an interesting tool that you talked about. But the AI models have been trained on the completed code. So what they look at is a code that is working. But a lot of learning when we are writing code happens in making those mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, when you're writing code, it doesn't work. You go and try something else. You try something else. There's a lot of learning that happens before you get to that final code.
Yeah.
And that learning or that training, when you train on finished code, is not there. You lose that, the trial and error method. So I think there are a couple, and I did a post on this, and for the life of me, I can't remember the names of those two.
But not always better.
So there are companies that are actually teaching AI to sort of go through that learning process, which is so critical because, and that is also part of your whole, AI thinking like a human.
Yeah.
So vibe coding is on the finished product, but yes, there's more of it.
Yeah. And one thing I think all three of us need to always step back is like, barely anyone is thinking about this like we're thinking about this in terms of every day, all the time.
Oh my God.
Like,
that's the only thing.
Guys, I'm like, the multiverse is real. This is real. Time travel is going to come because quantum. Like, people are like, Seema, are you crazy? I was like, everything sci-fi is coming true. I'm like, let me step back because people are
going to be in your home.
People are not there, right?
Oh,
so let's go back to business for a second. I mean, I have two people who are heavily steeped in data, and I think this is a really important part of the conversation for this community, right? Like, I know data is hard, right? Like, I get it, but it is the backbone of AI, right? Like, if you can get people call it a data lake, which is basically aggregating all your data and labeling it and from all your different divisions, or if you're a small business, like putting in a place. There are products like Databricks. There are other products out there now that, Microsoft has or any AWS has. Everybody has their, depending on the infrastructure you use. But I'm also a big believer of like a data pond. Like, it doesn't, don't make it that complicated, right? So in a sense of like, how do we help navigate the data conversation to make it not seem so overwhelming and that they can see the ROI early in certain use cases? I'd love to hear your perspectives on that, especially because now we can use structured and unstructured data. There is something called ETL, like in a sense of like where
information.
Thank you, because I wouldn't have been able to say that. But and so help a business leader think through that a little.
You said it, right? Like, data is the backbone, right? And if you are planning on, and when you talk about the data pond, let me just kind of, clarify. Are you looking at from an organization's perspective, just within the organization, or are you thinking even wider than that?
I'm thinking narrower. Like, think about a division. Like, if I'm in marketing, I have so much data alone in just my marketing. Like, I'm like, how do I even bring that together? And of course, you need a larger strategy. Again, we're talking not apples to apples because it's very different for enterprise and medium size and small business and startup, right? Like, it runs the gamut, right? And obviously, if you're enterprise, there's so many data points.
Yeah.
So like, just give me like perspective. Like, how do we make this? Because if it's the backbone. And it's the hardest thing to do.
It is the hardest thing to do. It is siloed. But even within a particular division, right, you have data that is floating around in so many different forms and so many different databases.
And tools.
And so many different tools,
and
right? Exactly.
And
so I think you need like an actual steward and a team that actually does, a full, basically blown up repository and a taxonomy that kind of says that, okay, let's look at the drawing board, right? And see what data do we have? What is the importance of this data? And then start mapping things out and see what it can actually tell us. I'll give you an example of, a lot of people don't know about this, but JP Morgan is doing this beautifully.
They're doing it beautifully. I know people who work there.
Yeah.
I see that.
They are doing it beautiful.
I agree.
So they are basically overhauling their entire infrastructure.
Yep.
And this is not just in a division. Of course, like they're doing it different phases, but they are basically envision where there is going to be this massive data, infrastructure where it's going to be a combination of data lakes, data mesh, and yes, there are a lot
I don't know what a data mesh is.
Well, so data lake is that, but yeah, the mesh is basically, how do I put it in very simplistic terms? Like a connector. Yeah, like a connector, right?
Okay.
It's almost, imagine like why it sees like a mesh, right? So basically, the data lake is like the central place where all the data kind of comes, and you don't need to, transition it in a different form or anything. You could still have it in the database, but it's pooling it all together. And the mesh is basically like the thing where it kind of filters through, maybe in a simplistic term. So they're doing that where everything is there. So let's say if, a particular company is a client in asset management, but they also have accounts in the retail side, right? So all that information related to that client is in one place, right? So imagine the economies of scale and what it can do, for that organization.
And give you an example. Prudential used to work with JP Morgan like years ago. And it's like when you have a business account and a personal account, even those phone numbers were separated, right? So you could spend an hour just trying to fix something on your business side and then your personal side. And the point of this is like all of the data now is integrated. So your experience can be that much more faster, more personal, and more precise. Yeah. And you get your stuff done and the outcomes are better. And what's going to happen? You're going to build more trust with that brand. Yeah. You're going to be like, wow, like they know me. Why would I ever leave? Right. So loyalty, retention. That's what's possible with this stuff,
Happy
right?
Customers, lots of revenue, lots of cost savings. So best world.
and honestly, less people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's the truth, right? So,
so I think treating data as a product is the way to, you come with a product mindset. You look at it as how you develop a product, right? You want to do that with data. And if you have a data lake without governance, you're going to end up with a data swamp. It's just going to be messy.
What does that mean if you have a data lake without governance? So what's the governance? That's such a theoretical word.
So it's like you look at it with like data minimization. You don't want to get more data than you actually need for your company. You need to look at data security, in transit, at rest. How are you handling your data? You look at deduping of data. You don't want to have duplicative data.
Just I have duplicates of my contacts on my iPhone.
Exactly, right. I sometimes look at it and I've got the 3 names, the same name, same phone number. I'm like,
why do I need that?
Why? Exactly.
Yeah. I like anchoring things so people understand.
Right. So I think even when we talk of data ponds, right, within organizations, that is one thing. You don't want to have duplicate data. You want to make sure that, sometimes there may be a need because they are not talking to each other or whatever. But so that was just my 2 cents on it. How we handle data is so critical because data is destiny.
Yeah. And I'm one of the things I want people to understand is like, people have used data like Tableau and all of these previous dashboards have been there, but they're using historical data to potentially forecast, where now the goal is that you're using data and machine learning so that you're predicting things. So you can actually make decisions based on your data real time instead of, assuming in a lot of ways, right? And that means, this campaign is working right now, let's change it. That means like, this is a financial decision we need to, because tariffs are here. Let's put in the scenario. This is what it means for our company. So we need to switch this on and that off, right? Like that's what it means. Like, and again, every company is unique and different, but if you have the data in a place and you do need an expert to help you think through what that looks like and what the business outcomes that you're seeking, and I'm sure they'll think of many more opportunities to leverage that data, but you get to a point where you can literally have a conversation with your data.
Yeah.
And, that's you instead of somebody in the data analytics team having to put together a report that takes 3 weeks. Exactly. And then where you can do this real time. Yeah. That's a game changer.
It like is. Copilot. Like when you talk to Excel and now you talk to PowerPoint. Yeah.
God, Excel. Oh.
It's still not going away as of now.
Okay.
People can let go of it.
I want to have a conversation about talent, because I know we've shared. So like, okay, there's We talked a little about responsible AI and their nuances. I know there's a lot more to talk in that. We've talked about just the reality of where this is all headed and data. Like from a talent perspective, I have two particular questions for you guys. One, as you're advising companies, what is the strategy in terms of, AI adoption? What does that look like from a employee state? Like, we've talked the words change management. I've heard it. I've heard, you have to upskill. But what is the reality of some of these companies? What's going to happen?
So, of course, I hate to say it, some jobs are going to be lost, but I also feel new jobs are going to be created, right? So we are in a phase where jobs are, it's going to be like an evolution, right? So when we talk about upskilling, and I hate it that, companies are letting people go, right? That's not the right strategy, right? I feel that people are your biggest asset, right? They are your subject matter experts. And you build, you have a company and the company is able to thrive is because of the people, right? So just, using AI as a thing that, now we can have AI do 10 people's job. That doesn't mean that, you need to let go of those people. So of course, AI literacy, I think first is very important. So when we talk about adoption and all those things, one of the things that we want people to know is like, hey, let's talk about AI literacy, right? And when we talk about literacy, it just doesn't mean using ChatGPT, right? So it's like, what does it mean to be AI literate, right? Understanding what the technology is capable of doing, but also what risks it brings, right? And how do you use it to basically take your workforce forward, right? How do you augment people's abilities? So that way they can do the job faster, but then they can do other things, right? They can create new opportunities for you, right? They can create, more revenue for you. They can help you expand to like new markets, right? So that's usually like my take on, this whole thing about like upscaling. Of course, like everybody needs to be AI literate.
What does that mean? Maybe I'll ask you,
Yeah.
right? Like, what does it mean to be AI literate? Because there's the technical side of things, and then there's to me, it's like strategic, practical, and tactical. Like, what does it mean to be AI literate?
So just to take a couple of steps back,
Sure.
when we look at organizations, I always say have like kind of this T-shaped AI literacy strategy, broad across the organization. Everybody needs to know for their particular organization what the use cases are, what the AI can do, what it cannot do, who it's built for, who it has excluded, what we can gain out of it, because we start trusting AI too quickly. So we have to, put the brakes on that. And then once we have this broad knowledge across the company of, what the AI models are, what AI does, what it cannot do, what are the tools in our company that we can look at, then we go into the vertical leg of the T, where we get deep into one particular, form of AI or one particular tool of AI. But across the company, there has to be sort of an AI 101, introduction to AI. What is narrow AI, without getting too technical, because getting too technical, in an understandable bite-sized format, and then go deep into one or two. Is it a T? Is it a pie? Whatever, by the shape of the pie.
That's you don't need to be a computer scientist you don't need to learn AI.
Yeah,
I'm far from a computer scientist, and I feel like I have a very good handle.
Oh, you're amazing, Seema. You become a therapist, right? Like, that's awesome.
I do.
But I also feel...
And I'm not paying $300 an hour. I love a therapist, think that's the best, but they're reimagining their industry right now.
And I think you can use ChatGPT as a therapist because you know what it is capable of doing and what it's not. For people who just brand new to ChatGPT, they should be a little wary of,
But you bring up a really good point, right? Like, I know where ChatGPT is going to have its gap. So if it gave me really bad advice, I'd be like, dude, it's like, what is this? Like, this is crazy, right? But for others, they're going to take it. It goes back to trust and verify, right? They're going to take it as word, as bonds.
Oh, yeah. Just how
and that's where it gets sticky, messy, yucky, because if you don't have that level of fluency and understanding, that these are machines. Here's where we are with it. Here's what's possible. Here's things that can be reimagined. Here's things that we don't want to touch right now.
Yeah.
Here's where eventually humanity is going, but like without that knowledge, you're just almost 100%, 110% trust because it's a machine. How is it wrong?
Speaks beautifully.
It speaks,
Yeah.
it articulates. If I put more information, oh my God, it knows me. And the big thing that gets me right now is like a lot of people don't have enterprise grade at home, right? And they're sharing all their information to the model, right? They're not even at a fundamental level turning off the privacy settings so that the things that they put in are not shared to train the model. And so it's like people don't know what they don't know. Kids don't know what they don't know.
Oh my God.
That's a whole other, reality. What are your thoughts on that, right? Trump recently mandated that between like AI education for, I think, kindergarten and 12th grade,
12,
they should be learning it. I agree, but how do we this has been an ongoing conversation on this pod too, right? There's the level of critical thinking. I think you guys saw recently, I put a LinkedIn article about my 11-year-old asking me to use ChatGPT. And I'm like, I think there's a solution because I think I wouldn't mind her using it for research. Instead of Google use ChatGPT, I actually feel good about that, or maybe Perplexity, right? But if it was like, go write me this essay that my teacher just told me to write on the chocolate factory, I'm like, no, So there have to be, in a way, like children's, settings already. But I'm just curious, what does that look like?
So Seema, unfortunately, the cat is already out of the bag. So
No.
But to your point, right? And I think when we're talking about AI literacy, and so as as Padmini also said, we have to talk about the good as well as the bad, right? Like what is good about it, what's bad, and the fact that people are able to recognize that, right? That's what like AI literacy is, right? And even for children, they are not going to have a choice. So Google is already quietly doing the work, right? They've already announced that, yes, with a lot of the schools, it's going to be at teachers' disposal. Kids are already going to have access to Gemini on their Chromebooks. And then just, I think, recently, OpenAI also signed a contract with the American Federation of Teachers. So they're also going very hard at it, right? So,
but are there levels? Because I don't mind that, if I'm being honest. I don't mind that at all. But I do think there needs to be not a kill switch, but different settings. They can get access to this model for these purposes only.
And I think that's where it comes down to that those rules need to be defined, right? Like what's acceptable, right? Because you also want to make sure that the children's critical thinking skills do not erode, right? So at what point in time is it introduced, right? Like I wouldn't feel comfortable giving ChatGPT to a 6-year-old, right? But yes, provided I am fine giving it to an 11, 12-year-old, provided we've provided, some guidance on how to use it, make sure that you're still using your critical thinking skills. You're not trusting what the AI is telling you blindly.
Yeah, but that's hard, right? I tell you, my 11-year-old, she watches these YouTube shorts. It's like some of the stuff she knows that don't trust everything, but like, it's like they just have it implement like in their mind.
There's a way to do it.
But hold on, no, I don't agree. But my point is, parents need to be educated. Teachers need to be educated.
100%.
And administration. So there's so many layers of fluency.
There's so many. Yes.
And so I agree.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the messy middle.
It's going to be the messy middle.
This generation is going to be very messy.
It's going to learn from a lot of trial and error. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And a lot of guardrails there that we need. I think like what happened with social media, everybody got onto social media. We learned the hard way, there were kids who used it to cause harm unknowingly. I mean, sometimes they think it's a joke, but it causes a lot of harm. So even with AI, we absolutely, it is very critical that we educate them rather than them learning on their own, So I think fundamentally it has to come into schools so that there is a framework around how they use AI. We've been doing that, Uvika and myself. So, like all these frameworks for prompting, frameworks for, understanding the whole communication, communication with the AI, how you talk to it, that's the prompt framework. But what it gives back, there has to be a framework around that to understand what it's giving back, So do you
Can I still
we
have a research project that's going on the side where we're running a camp for kids to understand how they're learning?
Yeah. Critical thinking.
It's very good. I'm going to do a lot of market research here with kids, but I think one of the things is the way that you get tested in school will have to change. Like I think there's there needs to be audio, like audible testing now, right? It's like, did they really get that?
Yeah.
Did they really read that? Did they really write that essay? Explain it to me.
Right.
Explain it to me.
I know.
And
Exactly.
even if it's an AI teacher assistant, so what does that look like? Hey, here's 5 questions. Explain what your work is. And it goes into an AI model. I'm solutioning right now. I'm just saying, like, let's go. But like it goes into an AI model and they were able to explain what they did in their work. And then it's rated because there's intonation and voice. It's not BS. It's not like, let me copy him. Let me find the answers to this question. They have to be different questions every time and they have to be in a specific room, right? Like, I think you can start to solve and put some guardrails where the kids are going to be like, oh, like, you know, like I can't just like, you know?
Right.
So anyway, I think there is a lot in there. I mean, I think we've also talked about this partnership with OpenAI and Mattel that's happening that could influence how toys are leveraging, you know, AI internally, which could be a use case of Barbie becoming, you know, your friend's best friend because it knows you so damn well. Like
that gives me I don't know. I cringe when I think of.
I know.
The innocent days are gone.
The innocent days are, or everything is just changing.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally all definitions will change. Definition of intelligence will change.
Oh, yeah.
Definition of critical thinking will change. You know, we will start. It'll be interesting to see, like, you know, 5-10 years from now.
I have one question on this and then we're going to get into rapid fire. Okay. So I was speaking at what is it called? It was called CREW, Construction Real Estate Association for Women, big industry event, chapter for DC. I did my keynote. I did this awesome curated panel. So it was very industry specific. And one lady gets up and she's like, listen, I've run a pretty large interior. It's like a major corporate interior design, like major company. She's like, my problem is now hiring the young people who think they can do shortcuts using AI where they're not, they don't understand the fundamentals. So she's like, I can walk into a room and it was construction and interior. So she's like, I can look at the light fixtures and be like, that's wrong. That's like 2 inches off, or this is here because I have years of experience and subject matter expertise. So what I consider that is like last mile expertise. She's like, so what happens to these entry-level kids who are coming in using these AI tools, thinking they know things that they don't, and they're trusting in this AI, and it's not helping me because I still need people to verify what they're proposing because they're not coming from a level of like 10 years of experience or even a few years of experience. How do we solve for that gap? What do you guys think?
That's
and if I stump you, it's okay.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
That is really hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah,
And
it's really hard. How do you, because what is happening is the kids think that, you know, this 10, 15 years of data has been crunched into like a prompt. So, and this thing will tell me what it is, but it's the lost craft, right? It's going to become that. And maybe like, you know, 50 years from now, everybody will be okay with it, you know, because the people who think that way are no longer there. And I don't know how
I think it's going to happen a lot faster than 50 years.
I'm just saying, like, you know, once you're all dead and gone.
But I also think maybe it's the going back to trust and verify. Maybe these tools get to a place where they're actually very accurate because they have this woman who's had 30, 40 years of experience, their information aggregated in these tools. So they are basically right. Like, you know, or 99.9% with 1% or 0.1% uptime. Like, you know, like,
exactly.
That's going to happen because the entry level jobs are changing. College kids don't like, you know, and I think more people who adopt AI, they're like, what does that entry level job look like now?
So here's the thing. I'll answer that as well. But Seema, I just want to, you know, go back to, you know, to the previous question. I feel having the fundamentals down is very important, right? So I'll give you a hypothetical scenario. What if, you know, one day your AI breaks, right? If you don't have software engineers who know how to fix it, like what's going to happen? My husband loves doing construction at home. You know, he's very the do-it-yourself person. But right now there's massive work going on. And when it comes to plumbing job, he knows he cannot handle, you know, this big pipe kind of work, no matter how handy he is. So you need to call the expert. And how that expertise comes is because you've spent a number of years So even when you go back to talking about kids with college, I do feel that they need to understand the fundamentals. Yes, now AI has come. So you need to be good at both. You need to know the fundamentals, but you also need to learn how to work with the technology. Because if you understand the fundamentals and when the technology is making a mistake, you can actually correct it, right? Because you're able to recognize that. And that's where the woman's example you gave, right? Because she has spent a number of years, she has the subject matter expertise. So even though the kids are taking the shortcut, but because, she spent a number of years, she's able to call, hey, even what AI recommended, it's not good.
But here's the deal. This is where middleware plays a role. So I'm just going back to that example of there are all these vibe coding tools, Lovable, Cursor, but they're missing potentially optimization of business models, of energy costs, of compute. And now this company has come up with, we focus on that, we fix it for you. Yeah. So you don't need that. So even in your plumber case, it's funny because I've done business roulette here, meaning let's think about an industry. How can we use AI for that? Plumbing is one of them, right? But it's what if I had just a very advanced plumbing GPT and you took pictures of the problem and it's just trained heavily on that industry and those problems. So as for somebody like your husband, I'm just saying, let's just play it out, right? For somebody like your husband who is a DIY guy, he's like, that's it. Thank you, Chat GPT or whatever this new thing is, plumbing GPT. That's the point, right? It will, it's not if, it will get like
we're
that.
We're getting there.
And even to that point of what I told a guy who has this tool, and I hate not knowing his name because I want to give him a shout out. But my whole point, I was like, how do you know these other tools are not going to get there? I was like, if I was you, I would focus on a strategic to get bought right now because you built it. That's a smart strategic potential move. But he wants to expand. He has some thoughts, but anyway, so I'm sorry.
You're not going to have.
Yes, but funny example is recently, and Padmini knows this story. So my husband was traveling, and we have 2 cars, and I'm not a car person. So we had this Porsche, and apparently something happened, and the Porsche broke down, and it gave me a message. I'm and I never drive that car. I was I don't understand what this message is. I literally took a screenshot of it and I punted it into ChatGPT. Can you tell me what this message is? But after it told me that, yes, the battery has died because it had a very weird message. I was this is not natural. I don't understand this. And I had to call somebody to come and fix it, right? Yeah. But yeah, I still needed a human to come and fix it for me.
Humans for a long time. I'm just telling you, again, I always have my emerging tech hat, startup hat on while I'm thinking about and then looking at humanity. But
we'll have robots.
Yeah,
that's the next thing.
2040, more humanoids than people.
We'll all have robots in our homes.
Yeah. Quick shout out to one of my favorite partners, Legacy Sessions, the studio where we tape the AI CEO podcast in the heart of Washington, D.C. If you're a founder, business leader, or creator who wants to look and sound world-class, Legacy is the spot to record. Beautiful sets, pro-level production, and a team that just gets it. Visit legacysessions.com and tell them I sent you. Let's get into some rapid fire. I know you guys have to head to a conference too. They're speaking tomorrow. What conference is it?
So tomorrow at the AI Community Conference at Microsoft.
Amazing. Yeah. So here we go. Ready? I'm going to do, if you both have an answer that's unique, let's do that, or else it could go back and forth up to you guys. This one, I think both of you. What's the best under the radar use case that you've seen for AI?
I would say AI for lost languages. I love that because it's culturally relevant. And at the same time, it's sort of bringing more people into the fore.
What does that mean, lost languages?
So languages that are used by just a very small community, like a language in rural India where only a few people are using it.
Very indigenous.
Yeah, very indigenous languages. Yeah.
So keeping the traditions and keeping that cultural
completely,
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know why, but I have this affinity for blind people. So I was actually very surprised when I discovered a number of years ago that there are now these sensors and these sticks, right, that blind people use. And now because it's tracking all the data it's seeing, and that actually converts into speech where, it tells a blind person that, hey, this is what's in front of you. Not a lot of people know that, this is something that's out there. And I thought when I heard about it, I found it very fascinating.
You should read the Neuralink
The Neuralink
oh
is.
my God, that's
That's a
amazing.
whole other
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly.
Neuralink, robotics,
Yeah.
and we can do that separately. I'm just going to share one here because like I don't think it's under the radar, but it's just starting to come. Where I keep seeing like breast cancer now can get detected 5 years before it happens, stuff like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you see Microsoft's?
Wow.
Yeah, Microsoft's announcement very recently.
I haven't.
It's with like 4 times the accuracy of a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
But I know people who've gotten double mastectomies because it's hereditary in their family and they're worried. But what if they had a tool like this and they'd have to worry every 6 months if they have cancer?
Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Especially
For people who
life-saving.
have it running in the family, and we know like some people, right? Like
Yeah.
personal friends who are going through it. And then unfortunately it runs in the family. Like, the friend had it and we're like, oh, maybe I need to inform my so-and-so sibling.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, something like that, it's amazing. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited for it, for like, what it can do for other people.
So one phrase you wish you would disappear from every responsible AI deck.
Oh, it's unfortunately, I don't think it can vanish, but I wish if we were in the perfect world that bias is inevitable. I wish it could vanish, but I know it can't.
Mm.
And I hear a lot of people, just generally AI expert right now.
We are not experts. We never say we are experts.
No. I don't think there's anyone who's an AI expert because this is so
evolving.
Evolving. So I don't like that word too.
Okay. GPT or Claude, who do you trust to build with?
I love both. I mean, Claude for content, I think generation's really good at it. GPT maybe for research, for different use cases.
Yeah, I think they both have their own uniqueness, right? So I feel GPT is very creative and you can do a lot of things. And depending on what you're looking to do, and Claude is like that wise soul, like your grandpa.
Yeah.
So that's how I would put it. But I think they both they're amazing. So GPT is like the young, cool kid. And, Claude is the grandpa who's very wise and, who's going to provide like, very, responses which are like very grounded, but not getting overly like, excited.
I love it. I love it. What was the first moment you realized that AI had arrived in this space?
Like, oh. I don't know. I guess when I started using it all the time, so I was like, holy cow, it's
here.
It's here.
It's here.
I mean, it's become my bud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are naming him. They're like, they have names for their, they're naming him.
I mean, one thing that I was, of course, surprised, and I know, like, for us, it had arrived a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think
because you guys are in traditional AI, but I'm just saying, like.
But I think for the common person, so recently I saw Google's ad where there's this girl in India, she's actually talking to the AI assistant, and the assistant is actually helping her solve some very complex math problems. And it's literally like a live tutor.
On GPT?
Not GPT, this is Google.
Oh, I was about to say, because ChatGPT wasn't great at math.
No, at all. But now it's like, now you're like, oh my God, you actually see that in a child's hand.
Yeah.
You have
doing that. I was like,
tools.
okay, AI is actually really here.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. AI without blank is just noise.
Humans.
For me, I would say it's trust.
Love it. Okay. What would an actually inclusive AI ecosystem look like in 2030?
I actually inclusive look like in 2030, I guess, where people can, again, trust AI and rely on it more than we are right now. I think we're getting there. So, yeah, I guess we wouldn't be like, oh, AI. We have that disclaimer everywhere, right? The AI may be hallucinating. Go and check your answers. I think that should always be there. That's responsible AI, but yeah, we can trust it more.
I think in terms of the ecosystem, and I think this is one of the things that, Seema, you had brought it up, I think initially, that it's very hard for some of the general purpose AI models that have been built to incorporate and consider everybody's, perspective. So of course you have these little pods and people in India, they're developing their role functional models, right? But if we can get to a state where, depending on where the AI is interacting, if it can make sense and maybe even ask questions from the user that, hey, did I get that right? Or what am I missing, right? And ask certain questions so it can try to produce responses or even do things where it's actually keeping the user's perspective in mind. And sometimes it may know that right away because observing the environment, and of course it learns from the data. So I guess a perfect, inclusive ecosystem is where the AI is behaving and working with you while aligning with your values. Then there needs to be that collaboration between the AI and human, and that collaboration can only come with trust.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, how can people get involved with you guys? I mean, you are working on AI 2030. We didn't even get into that. The Asian Women Advancing AI, obviously Noelle Russell's whole AI Leadership Institute, your workshops. How can they find you?
So on LinkedIn for sure, do connect with us on LinkedIn. So the Asian Women Advancing AI is a community that the two of us co-founded. We saw this gap in the space. There are a lot of technical communities for Asian women, but one specifically for AI was what was missing, and that's what we co-founded, and we're having a lot of fun with it. It is, again, on LinkedIn. If you search Asian women.
We have a website as
yeah,
well.
we have a website as well.
We haven't socialized it.
Yeah, we haven't socialized
Did
it.
you use Replit or Lovable to build it?
We used it. We had it in less than an hour.
We actually didn't use any of those, but we used another tool. So it's awaai.org, Asian Women Advancing AI.org. So definitely find us there. And then, yes, Noelle Russell's AI Leadership Institute. That is, you can go to the iHeart AI on School, SKOOL. So that's part of that. And she also has a paid membership at the AI Leadership Institute, and then AI 2030 if you want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. So I won't go too much into detail. I think we'll need a separate conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the think tank that we're working on. We are developing these responsible maturity assessments that we are going to be, advising corporations on, just to kind of be able to assess if they're deploying AI, like how do they do it responsibly and where they are on the spectrum. But yeah, people can connect with us on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I just want to mention that the seed for founding Awai was actually planted here in DC. Last year. And that's when we started talking about it at a conference. And within 12 days, we launched the community.
Let's go. High five.
Yeah, exactly.
High five. Listen, and now you guys are here.
Back again in DC.
And so much progress. So thank you both for being on the AI CEO podcast. I knew when you guys were coming to DC, which is a rarity for both of you to be here, that we had to make it happen. And what a great conversation. So with that, thank you again for listening this week on the AI CEO podcast. These women drop so much gold. So please like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'm going to continue to bring amazing guests, amazing conversations to help you build your business forward today and in the future.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
We had such a great time.
It's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of the AI CEO podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. It helps me reach more leaders like you and continue bringing in top AI-first founders, industry experts, and visionary CEOs to share their insights. AI is evolving fast, and the CEOs who harness it today will lead tomorrow. Stay ahead of the curve, keep learning, and keep building. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.